What's happening, people? Today we're getting into the nitty-gritty of competitive Pokemon with EVs, IVs, and Natures. Basically, how you train your Pokemon. And this leads really good into the first thing to note, which is whenever you're watching someone on YouTube, Twitch, or a live event, and they mention it depends on how a Pokemon is trained, or a Pokemon is trained in a particular way, they are talking about EVs, IVs, and Natures. I want to talk about Natures first. Let's get right into it. So there's a wide variety of Natures, and most of them affect stats. These are the ones that get used in competitive play, and they actually do matter. Each nature that affects stats will affect one stat positively by 10% and another stat negatively by 10%. This can be the difference between getting a knockout or surviving an attack. Most of the time, competitively, you want a nature that will have a negative stat drop on the attacking stat that you're not going to use. So whether that is special attack because you got physical Groudon, or the attacking stat because you got a Kyogre and you want it to be a special attacker as it normally is. If you're making a Trick Room team, you might consider having a nature that lowers the speed stats so that you're faster under Trick Room. Now, natures can be bred for. One of the parent Pokemon needs to have the desired nature and be holding the item called Everstone, as it increases the odds of the nature being passed down. Alternatively, in the Generation 8 games of Sword and Shield and Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, nature mints were introduced, allowing you to artificially change the nature without having to breed for it, greatly expediting the team building process. Moving on from natures, we now have IVs, otherwise known as individual values. The best way to look at IVs is it's how talented your Pokemon are. Each stat has an IV range going from 0 all the way up to 31, and the higher the better. At level 50, considering that's what VGC and ranks battles are played at in-game, the first IV is equal to 1 stat points increase, but then it's every 2 IVs afterwards. IVs, like natures, can be passed down via breeding. The Pokemon with the desired IVs needs to be holding the item called Destiny Knot, or increased chances for those IVs to be passed on. Otherwise, in a few of the more modern games, there are ways to artificially increase your IVs. Sword and Shield had hyper training, so that you don't have to breed for the perfect IVs if you're not wanting to do that. But like natures changed via nature mints, hyper-trained IVs cannot be passed on via breeding. As well as there being no way currently to lower IVs, there are certain situations where you want 0 attack IVs as well as 0 speed IVs. So the speed IVs, like a negative speed nature, is for a Trick Room team so that you're quicker under Trick Room. For the attack IVs though, it is ideal to have 0 attack IVs in a special attacking Pokemon. That way, if that Pokemon is ever confused and it hurts itself in its confusion, it deals less damage since confusion damage is dealt via the attack stats. As well as in each game, there is either a character or a system that allows you to check the IVs of your Pokemon. You never get what number it is, but a word or a group of words gives you a range as to what their IVs are, with no good being 0 and best being 31. Now we get to EVs. If IVs are how talented your Pokemon are, EVs are basically the skill your Pokemon get for working out and honing in on that talent. EVs are very similar to IVs. They are a point system that increases your stats, but they are slightly different. Firstly, Pokemon are born with 0 EVs. There are 510 EVs to use in total across all of your stats, and each stat can have a maximum of 252 EVs. Now, at level 50, the first 4 EVs in a stat equals 1 stat point, and then it's every 8 afterwards. And for the sake of argument, at level 100, every 4 EVs equals 1 stat point. Now, because of this, EV number 509 and 5010, basically useless. They don't do anything because 508 is the last EV that is divisible by 4. Doesn't matter if you're playing at level 100 or at level 50. And while we're on the subject of math, at level 50, you are better off investing into either 3 or 5 stats, because if you go into 2, 4, or 6, you are missing out on 1 stat point, even if you use all of the EVs. The most popular EV spread, how the EVs are spread across the stats, is 252, 252, 4. You have 252 EVs into stat 1, another 252 EVs into stat 2, and 4 EVs into stat 3. 3. This is a very simple EV spread. It doesn't matter what stats you put it in because it depends on the Pokemon. More complex EV spreads are heavily used, especially in higher level play. The reason for this is that you can actually train your Pokemon to get more out of it. You might be sacrificing some damage, but getting more out of your Pokemon is absolutely essential for winning battles. I use a Zacian with EV spread across 5 stats to make it more bulkier while still dealing a lot of damage. Because of that, it actually managed to get me a lot of wins because it could tank out attacks that it normally wouldn't be able to take out with a more meta spread. There are 2 really cool tools for both team building, but also making sure that your EV spreads are top notch, especially the complex ones. Those are Pikalytics, you're able to team build, but also they've got a damage calculator, allowing you to pick a Pokemon that you want to feature in your team and the problem Pokemon that you want to be dealing with, and being able to go, okay, well, I want to be able to survive with so much HP. What EVs do I need to be able to do that? The other tool is Pokemon Showdown. Again, they have a team builder tool, but it's also a battle simulator. So you're able to actually get some experience with your team, trialing out the spreads to see if they are powerful enough for what you want them to do or bulky enough for what you want them to do before you put these changes into the game. There are a few ways that you build your EVs because you have to train to get them. The expensive way is through vitamins. There are 6 different vitamins and each one affects a different stat by 10 EVs, meaning that you need to use a total of 26 to max out the stat for its EVs. Another way is through battling. Now, when it comes to battling to get EVs, I do recommend searching in Google, how do I EV train in whatever game that you are playing? The Pokemon that you want to look for change for each generation. All Pokemon give between 1 to 3 EVs, but generally I look for Pokemon that do 1 EV because it gives a lot more control. There's a few held items that do expedite the process for getting EVs. Firstly, you got Macho Brace. When a party member holding an item gets EVs from battle, those EVs are doubled for the stat given. Other items are the assortment of power items. There are 6 power items, 1 for each stat. What these do is, as of Generation 8, give 8 EVs when a battle is over, meaning that if you are battling something that gives, let's say, 1 EV, you get an additional 8 EVs, making 9. There's also a condition, a virus, whatever you want to call it. It's helpful though, called Pokerus. Well, yes, like I said, it is a virus, but there's no downside to Pokerus. In fact, what it does is that it doubles the EVs that you get, as well as it stacks with Macho Brace and the power items after their effects are applied. With Macho Brace, you could get as little as 4 EVs if the holder has Pokerus. With power items, you could get 18 EVs at minimum. In some games, they also give a way of gaining EVs for sending your Pokemon away for a time period. In the Sword and Shield games, since that they are the most recent games of filming this video, Scarlet and Violet are just around the corner, it was Pokejobs. You send your Pokemon away to try and train them in a specific stat. If those Pokemon were also holding the correct choice item for that stat and had Pokerus, in a 24-hour period, you would be able to fully max out a stat. Another thing that you can do with EVs, unlike IVs, is lower them. There is an assortment of berries that lower EVs. If you overdo a stat for EV training, you can just quickly collect the berry that you need, lower the stats as far as you need it to be lowered, might take a few of the berries, and then continue EV training from there. And that method works basically in every game that these berries are in. Otherwise, you've got to hatch another Pokemon, which you can't do for the legendaries. Hopefully, Scarlet and Violet have a feature that Sword and Shield had after Isle of Armor came out. There was a character that you could go to and she would clear up the EVs of a Pokemon for you, allowing you to start fresh. And for those that have a hard time at making EV spreads, Pikalytics has a very good tool to help you get the right EV spreads by allowing you to see what EVs people go for on popular Pokemon and how often those spreads are used with a percentage, meaning that you can go, okay, well, this is the most popular spread, so it has to be good. You just got to note what the spread is so that you know how to play the Pokemon. You don't want to play something bulky when it's not built for bulk. But that's all I have for you today. This is a bit more of an in-depth video. than what the previous guide was. But maybe in the future I'll touch base on EVs a lot more in depth, but I just wanted a guide that everyone could use to help them in the team building process and understand why these three things matter, because it can be the difference between winning and losing battles. It'll be awesome if you guys hit that like button, that subscribe button as well. I've got more guides in the works for all of you. The idea of these guides is to be able to make you better trainers and team builders. So make sure you keep an eye out for when more guides of mine come out. Also, go check out some of my battling videos. You might pick up a team that you really like, or find some strategies that are really cool. But anyway, I hope you all have a good day. Happy battling.